Hello viewers, I'm SB and welcome to Squeakcross, Home Squeak Home. This is a Picross or nanograms game that contains a ton of puzzles. It's something like 650 puzzles. And also has this whole having a pet rodent and like decorating their area sort of layer that is it's a little bit less of a focus for me than the puzzles, but there's a ton of love put into it. Like I said, I started us in a puzzle because I'm very like puzzles first, but we'll check out that other stuff in a second here. So if you're not familiar with Picross or nanograms, what this kind of puzzle is, it's basically a sort of simple logic puzzle where you are given a grid of cells and you are to shade some number of those cells based on the hints you're given to the side of the rows and above the columns here. So these tell us how many cells in each row or column are shaded in discrete contiguous groups. So like in this leftmost column here, there's a group of 3 and a group of 5. The group of 3 is above the group of 5. They give us sort of the relative positioning. And then from the crossovers of the values, you just have to figure out where exactly the shaded cells are. So this is a 15 by 15. Let's get in here. We have the game comes with a couple of different like marking sets initially, so they give you a couple of different shapes you can work with to sort of like divine things, mark things as you will. Also, if you hold C and just mouse over spaces, it gives you a quick cell counter, so you don't have to be constantly counting yourself. But right away here, like the way I would start this puzzle is this 3 and 9, right? This is most of this column is shaded. 12 of the 15 cells in this column are shaded. So one way we can think about this is this big group of 9 here, right? If it's as far down the column as possible, it would look like this, right? These heavy divider lines, I have them set every 5. And the game has a ton of display options. By the way, you can really control a lot of the way it looks. How I have the separators turned to high contrast. Sometimes on different puzzles, they'll try to do them in different numbers to split it up more sensibly. Like if the puzzle is like 18 cells tall, instead of splitting it into 5s, they'll like split it into 2 9s, but you can force it to 5s if you always like it at 5s or whatever. There's really a lot of thought and care put into the presentation and stuff in that way. So if this is the bottom-most possible presentation of this would look like that, right? So we'll just go ahead and actually mark that with all these circles. The topmost presentation of this would be 1, 2, 3, a group of 3. Then there has to be an empty cell, right, in order to make it a separate group of 3 and 9. And then the group of 9 would start here and it would end up like down here. So any cell that is in both of those groups, both the northernmost possible version of the 9 and the southernmost possible, is definitely part of the 9, right? And in every configuration, it will be real. So we could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All of those cells are actually for sure filled in and part of this big group of 9. And in fact, we can kind of do this even a little bit further. The bottommost orientation of this has 9 cells and then a break here and then 1, 2, 3. We know that cell is also full because it's in both the topmost and bottommost representations of the group of 3. You can see when I put this right here, if we were to actually count this row out, like this cell can't be empty. Apparently, I haven't done the logic for that yet, but the game is eager to tell us, nope, that's an error. Is this easy to figure out? Let's see here. This would be 12. I mean, this is about the same amount of fullness as that column. So this would be like 1x, 4x, 7 looks like that. So once again, we're going to run into this thing where like there's this huge overlap between the 2 possible versions of this line, right? And the overlap looks like this, I think, right? 7x, 4x, 1. So yeah, all of these cells necessarily are filled in. And this is just this is a thing you get faster at as you do it. Actually, this column here, looking at it, is 1x2 x7, right? Like that's also all, but this is also one away from full, so we can do the same thing here, where the overlap between the two versions of this is pretty huge. And in fact, because we have the filled in cell in this row already, if we were to start down here, this is 7 cells, but we know that it can't be these 7 cells because this cell is filled in already from that other row. So this is a group of 8 then, so this actually can't be filled in. This is our 7 captive right here, and that means that the 1 and 2 are there, and then we just have 2 spots where that 1 could be. It's always tricky when you're doing like puzzles as a Let's Play thing, because it's like I have no way of knowing if I'm going too fast for people who have never done this kind of puzzle to keep up with or not. So apologies if I am moving too quickly or too slowly. So we can, drawing out from this line of blocks that we definitely have filled in, we can tell like any group of 7 extending from the right side of the puzzle here is going to cover at least this much space, right? The rightmost block of 7 to end this line is right here, and we know that it can't be any further left than ending with this block, because we know this block is filled in. So all of the possibilities are going to have at least this much space in common. So that gives us some more to work with. And it tells us some interesting things, right? Like this column here only has one group that has as many as 3 blocks in it. So we can just mark this off. This is definitely the 3. This column only has one group that has at least 3 blocks in it. So we know these 3 are part of the 4. So one of the 2s is above that and one of the 2s is below that. And that doesn't give us anything to mark just yet, but it may in the future. It may in the near future. I marked off this column because with this row ending with a 2, obviously it can't be these 2 squares, because then they would butt up against this and make a group of 3 instead. Okay, what else? We can keep working with just like looking at cells that have a large number of spaces filled in already. This 1, 3, 8 gives us a lot of the same feel as that 9, right? The southernmost group of 8 would extend up to here, and then we can imagine this would look like 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those cells are necessarily filled in. Here we have a 1, 4, 7. Here we have a 1, 5, 7. So we know most of the position of this 7 already. And in fact, we know a little bit more than this, right? Because obviously this 7 can't be these 5 cells and these 2, right? If it would bump up against this and become a group of 8. So we know at least one more of the cells is to the right. So it definitely can't extend to here. Which means that, like, if this is the end, x 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, x, actually, there's only just barely enough room for 1, 5, 7 in the row. I didn't even do the math on that, but that just exactly fits. So we do know exactly where those are. That would probably have been a pretty good place to start, honestly. And you can see when you've got a row figured out, it crosses it out like that nicely. Is 1, 2, 3, 6 the same? So we have 6x, 3x. It is, right? That's the same amount of total cells. One thing that's a little tricky is you have to, it's not just adding up the numbers, it's remembering to effectively pay the cost of the breakage. Each break between groups is also 1 cell. Yes, that gives us something to work with here. because this column only contains 2 groups and only one of them has at least 2 cells in it. We know this is the 7, and it could extend at most down to here. This column here with the 5 and the 3, we know this is the 5. These 3 cells belong to the 5 because otherwise the 5 would be right here, and there's no room for a 5 to the north of it. So that tells us, first of all, that the northmost filled-in cell is potentially here, which gives us some more blocking. And as we continue to chip away little parts of the puzzle, you know, what can and cannot be will continue to reveal itself. So we know that the 9 in this row here is in this part of the row. It's blocked off by this. It has to be to the right of all of this. And there's not actually a lot of room over there. So actually, I think it has to be these 9 cells in order to make room for that one. That gives us something. We know that this is the 2, and these 2 cells are part of the 6 in this column. And my style of solving these puzzles is definitely, there's a lot of jumping around that goes on. I have pretty severe ADHD, and so games like this, like just big groups of puzzles, are actually like a kind of an important resource for me. I need to have something that has a bunch of kind of like straightforward logic puzzles in it to help me focus as like a second monitor thing when I'm having a day where the attentional stuff and my executive order dysfunction is a little more challenging. And I have found this to be like really, really excellent for that. And it just so happens that this style of puzzle plays very well with that that sort of thing as well. So what else are we looking at here? This group of 3 obviously is part of the 7 since it's outsizes the other groups. And we know there's not enough room for this group of 2 to fit in here. So the group of 2 must be north of this X, which means this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's these 5 tiles and like some of this or some of this. In order to end with a 3, this row has to end like that. And you just sort of keep bouncing around. We know that this tile can't be filled in because there's no room for that group of 2 to extend that far, which then gives us this to complete the group of 2 in that column, which also completes the group of 2 in that row. This group of 2 in this row is already finished, which is a thing that's worth marking down. And you know, it's like that. And the whole time you have your own custom designed little rodent creature over here hanging out and pulling little snacks out of somewhere. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a huge fan of rats and stuff. Anybody who's been around the channel for a while knows that. And so I do like a game that lets you have a cute rat, and then acknowledges that rats are cute and they're good friendly pets instead of always being the villain in a sort of like a weird cartoon logic way. I do find the presentation of this game a little bit cutesy for my taste generally. But we'll get into that stuff a little bit more. I think it's good, it's fine, it's going to be a significant draw for some people, but it is kind of a lot for me. So knowing that this is crossed out actually gives us this cell as well, right? In order to fit 6 into the space that we have here, we definitely are using these 4, which closes that off as well. What else do we know here? We know an awful lot, actually. So, okay, right here I'm noticing we have this 2, 3, 2, 3. We have 2 groups already. This must be the first 2 and the first 3. Again, just in terms of what will fit in the space. And then we have the other 2 and 3 down here. And like the bottommost configuration of these is going to use these cells, and the topmost configuration is going to use these cells. So we know these are all live, which is kind of interesting because that means this is definitely This is definitely the 5, although spacing wise, I guess we knew that already. This is the 5 in this row, so the 2 in this row is very to this side. It will definitely use this cell at the very least, right? Because we have to imagine, you know, the room for the X plus plus 2. And yeah, it's got some chill, relaxing music. It has a like streamer friendly copyrighted music toggle, which I think is kind of strange. Like, I don't know. It's a weird thing in this business where developers continue to put copyrighted music in their games and let you just turn it off instead of just not using it in the first place. I don't know. I don't fully understand the logic there. So this column having 1, 4, 3, 3. There's not enough room for X3. So there's not enough room for the 4 and both the 3s to be below the X. So we know the 1 and the 4 have to fit into this narrow area, this spot where they just barely fit above the X. That 3 finishes there, and then the other 3 is going to be either these 3 cells or these 3 cells. In any case, those 2 are guaranteed to be part of the thing. And in fact, we're not being left a lot of room here. Like, we have to actually mark out these other groups. Yeah, we're running out of space for these other groups as we things start to get filled in, which is excellent news. Because this is already 5, this must be the 1 at the bottom of this column. There's not enough, you know, obviously, if this group were to descend down enough to connect to that, it would be too large to be a 7. So that tells us a couple of things. Let's see here. We have a 5, 1, 2, 5, 1. Okay, this row here where we have 1, 1, 5, 2. Here's our 2. This is our 5. This grouping here. It's like 1, 2, X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or if the 5 is left shifted, then these could be the 2. But that gives us that, and then we have a pair of 1s over here. Don't quite have that marked out yet. Because we know this is part of the leftmost group in this row here, first of all, we can mark that out because it can't extend that far out. We can also mark off all of these right now. We know that group doesn't extend out that far. Here we need space for this group of 1 above the group of 3, so we know that must be true, which again closes off some of the space that could be colored in here and lets us finish this column. Here we have, so this is our 5. Here's our 2. We have a lot of like ambiguous space over here where we've almost got it marked out, but these like the presence of these large number of single block groups creates a lot of ambiguity. We will work that out later. So since there's only room for this to become a 2, then we know we're not using any of this space. The 3 is over here, which tells us a whole bunch of things. That's 4, so there's 8 there. Once again, in order for there to be room for a group of 1 at the top of this must be true, and then we can cascade that knowledge out like that. And this is the satisfying part, right? When you learn something and it teaches you a bunch of other things, and then you're getting to fill in. The dominoes are just sort of like logically falling all across the puzzle. This is our 5, so this is our 3. There's just enough room for a 7 here. And that means this has got to be 1, and then the big group of 5. See, this is still a little ambiguous because there's room here for this to be 1x, 1, 2. Oh, no, there's not actually. The 1 and the 2 all both have to fit into this space, this being the rightmost block of the 2, I guess. So the leftmost 1 fits into this space. The rightmost 1 is guaranteed to be here, which closes off that cell for the column. I guess we already knew that because the 7 was finished in that row. but you can only be paying to so many things at a time as a human being. Okay, that is 6. We get our 7 done. Here's another 1. This is the only space left in this row for a 3 to fit into. And that'll close that column. You get all those marked off. The group of 7 is not fully represented yet. That means this group doesn't extend out in this row, so that solves this column. The cascade. The cascade is so good. Those of you who have the logic puzzle brain thing, the whatever it is that makes these really work for the people they really work for, you already know what I'm talking about. I don't need to convince the people for whom this stuff works. So that puzzle apparently represented the cone of shame. So here's the sort of like the overlying metaphor loop of the game, I guess, is when you solve puzzles, you're unlocking items for either the customization of your rat or the customization of your rat's living space. Now, I have not... This is my rat Boggles. As you can see, I have not done a tremendous amount of customization. You start with just one room, and then you end up unlocking like a whole floor plan up here, as you can see. And there is so much stuff. I did put down a little like mushroom themed record player because I thought that was kind of cute. I have not done a great job of decorating young Boggles' space here. I spent not much more. I spent a little more time customizing Boggles herself, but obviously like most of what I'm doing here is puzzles because I love puzzles. But yeah, if you're into this stuff, there is a huge amount of unlockable furniture, and like if you wanna build a space into a the game's very queer friendly, by the way. They put in a rat blahage, so they know exactly who their audience is, and I do appreciate that. Yeah, you can unlock a huge amount of like base items. I have played enough puzzles to unlock all of the item models, which is that many puzzles. And then once you have unlocked all of the item models, you can flip each of the pages over and get more difficult versions of the puzzles that unlock the ability to customize them. So, you know, as you can see here, this is mostly it's color variants. Some items I think have a couple of different variants as well. And the whole time you're playing, every time you finish a puzzle, you're unlocking progress toward sticker packs. So there's another level of like attachables on top of the buildables and wearables, and there's a lot of it. There's a lot of this stuff, and I think it's very cute. It's a lot of space, a lot of different disconnected spaces in case you, I guess, want to theme them or whatever. Not my favorite stuff. Not the stuff I come here for, but I think this probably will like really land with some people. If I'm honest, it almost makes me feel bad a little bit. Like, I know that's silly, but it does almost make me feel a little bit bad that I haven't given Boggles a more comprehensively decorated place to live. You can see here the rat customization stuff, the rodent customization stuff, I should say, is pretty... Well, this is just the dressing room, but the physicality stuff is pretty robust as well, to the point where you really could, I think, represent like almost any kind of rodent, like small cage rodent creature. Like you can make it more of a mouse, you could make it more of a sort of weaselly in appearance. I mean, it's adorable. I can't say it's not adorable. It's just, you know, it's just sort of again, not the stuff I am mainly here for. Stuff I'm mainly here for is the puzzles. And like I said, there's a lot of them, and they're good. You can see, yeah, the front side of the pages, I've completed them all already. But now I'm just working on the challenge mode editable stuff. So yeah, and you can view this in list view if that's a little bit less overwhelming. I don't know. I think catalog view is fine. Anyway, let's do one more, and then we'll get out. But yeah, I think this thing is really excellent. It is $15 full price. That's a lot of puzzles and a lot of polish, and a lot of like cozy home setting stuff for the people who are into the cozy home setting stuff for that price. I think it's absolutely rad. So this is a 25 by 25. This is probably going to take a second. So we definitely I'm definitely drawn right away to these big groups. Anywhere you see like a big number, especially a double-digit number, I feel like is a pretty good place to start. So again, just like counting it out, like leftmost way for this to work is that's the rightmost edge of the 8. We have the X, and then here's the rightmost edge of the 13, right? And then the leftmost edge of the 13 would, in the rightmost version of the layout, the leftmost edge of the 13 would be here. All of these cells are contained within the 13, no matter how it is set. And then X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So all of these are contained within the 8, no matter how it is set, right? So again, the 8, and then like here to the 10. I'm just using the 5 so you can really very quickly see that this is the edge of the 10, right? And then we get a little bit less information in this cell, but or in this column, or this row, but it's still good. These 13s are probably interesting. Like X1. So here's where the 13 ends. Here's 13 from the bottom. So still there's a lot of slack in that column. 1, 2, X, 1, 2, 3, X, 1, X. So this is where the 12 would start. Okay, that's good. So actually, if this is where the 12 ends, then this is like X, the group of 1, X, the group of 3, X, the group of 2. There's none, unfortunately, none of the rest of these overlap. 2, 3, and 2. Let's just get started here. Hold on, I miscounted one of these. 2X, 1, 2, 3, X, 1, 2. Yeah, because these should be one tile different, right? 2, 3, 1. And 2, 3, 2, X. So this is where this one should be starting. So yeah, actually, there we go. Alright, sometimes it helps to draw out the spacers if you're a little bad at counting. I mean, once the area that you're working in gets large enough, obviously it can be tricky. So that's the bottom of the 11. That's the bottom of the 9. Now if we mark this from the beginning, 1X. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, X. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This row only has groups of 1 in it, so we can mark that. This row only has a single group of 2 in it, so we can mark all these, which is interesting. Because that actually gives us a lot of stuff to do in the top here, right? This column has to begin with a group of 7, which could not fit in the space above this marker, and there's probably at least a few more. Yeah, we can't get a 4 in there. We can't get a 6 in there. Okay, so we know all of that. And then because this is a group of 4, we can kill any horizontal spaces here that aren't at least 4, and then we can go back and mark off any spaces that are not large enough to hold the topmost group here. So there we go. That was some information. That narrowed down some stuff. 1X 13 out to here, because we know, right, again, thanks to the marker groups. Any row or column that contains a group that is more than half the size of your puzzle is going to be immediately very useful, right? I didn't mark out this column yet, which is probably worth doing. So like, imagine 2, 2, 1. So here's where the group of 11 would land. Oh wait, except that's not quite right, because there's a group of 1 below the group of 11, so it'd be the 11 would start here and go to there. So all of those are filled in. There's probably like good marking strategies for like using the extra marks in a more long-term way. I don't really. I just use them to pace basically. Okay, we know a couple of these, like these groups, these things that start with groups of 4, because of the position of these groups of 2. We know that these tiles can't be filled in, because if they were, they'd overrun the groups. Same thing here. There's no room for a group of 3 in here. The highest it could start is right there. This group of 6 will necessarily have to extend at least this far, as well this one. Group of 5 goes to here. This group of 3, there's no room for stuff that far down. Okay, that's all. It's all information. It's maybe not the most immediately useful information, but it is all information. Okay, so 1914 is like, it's a lot, but yeah, see, you have to imagine it like this, right? That's 9? Yeah. So because this group here is not necessarily in the 9, we can't connect them over this space because we don't know where the breaks between the shapes are. Any one of these cells could actually be empty, although there's a fair likelihood that they are part of the 9, because there is an arrangement where those cells are empty. So what else can we connect right away, or what else has enough space filled in that we can get some solidarity on the groups? This here, we have a 4, an X, a 6 that would extend to there, and below that, 3 more groups. So X1, 2, X1, X1. That actually is pretty close to filling up the whole thing, right? So this is the northernmost representation of this group of 6. The southernmost would be 1, X1, X1, 2, X. That. So we do have some significant overlap there. That fills some things in. This is 6 and 9. This is going to be hugely overlapping. So here's like the uppermost 9. So that all fills in there. We still have 21 spaces left in this column. So these 8s and 9s are not necessarily large enough to give away information by themselves. Yeah, 2x. Yeah, this stops just short of where the southernmost version of that 9 ends. So that doesn't quite tell us anything. 18212 is quite a lot in total. So like, you imagine the 2, the 1, the 2, and then the 8 looks like that, which obviously it couldn't be, because, you know, the group of 8 is going to have to contain that thing. But what this tells us is that filled in block that is immediately to the left of the cursor is far enough over to the right that it can't be the group of 1 by itself, separated from the 8. There's not enough room for that. So we can go ahead and fill this in. We know this is all the group of 8, and the 1 is somewhere to the left. Which again is not necessarily super meaningful yet. So 5, 1. Yeah, here, unfortunately, there is just enough room to fit X7, X1, X5 to the right of this. So this totally could be the one, the leftmost one in this column. All right, 2, 3. If this is the topmost part of this 10, then okay, you get a little bit of overlap, right? 1x. Yeah, these two columns should get marked out. So what's kind of interesting here is that only the 1 will fit in this space if there are indeed any numbers in this space at all. So we start our 2 here, which means the 10 starts down here. Very similar to the last one. And already we're getting like of these 10s and 11s, we're getting like 7 cells marked out. So we're getting to position these pinned down pretty significantly. There is just enough room for this 3 in here, so the 9 could start as far north as that, which definitely doesn't give it any overlap with the 9, with the southernmost position of this 9. That is a shame. So where else can we gather knowledge here? We're trying to set up the bases here. We're setting up a bunch of like exclusions, places where things necessarily must be, places where things necessarily can't be. We're seeding the ground. Every time we make one of these conclusions, we're seeding the ground for the part of that puzzle where all of a sudden you get the cascades, where the knowledge is like every new bit overflows into another bit. 4x 5 would have to contain this. x3 there's still so much dead space in that row. There are 6 tiles unaccounted for at least, so unfortunately that gives us way too much space to move those things around in order to draw any conclusions right now. I think the same is true here, sadly. Right, 1x 9 would only run to here. So this could be part of the 9, it could be the 1. Yeah. Alright, what else don't we know? That 7 is large enough that it might be something, right? The northernmost version of that 4x, 1x. And then here's the 7 extending down to here, which is exactly where the 7 extends up to in its southernmost configuration. So that's something. So this is the edge of the 9. This is where the 9 definitely is. This is part of the 5. That could be part of the 5 or it could be part of the 9, depending on how things are spaced to the left and right. So we can't necessarily join it to either of the groups just yet. One thing we can say for sure is that this group here of 7 is not connected to this. This is the 4. Right, because to connect these would form a group of 11. Actually, we have 7 filled in slots right there, plus 3, plus 1. So, because we know that there must be at least 1 dead space between these two, we know that the 10 can actually only start as far over as that, which means this space right here must be filled in as part of the 10. Unfortunately, that same trick doesn't quite work on the rows above, where 11 would be fine. Doesn't necessarily tell me a huge amount over here either. Okay, so if this is, let's say this is the 3. Is it possible? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the 1 could be south, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, I should just use the counter. Yeah, so unfortunately it is possible for these things to be the same group and possible for them not to be, which I hate to hear. There's so much space floating around here that this could even be the 1. Very awkward. apologies, by the way, for I know I seem to be like inappropriately marking cells here and there, and quickly flipping them back. I have a little bit of a neuropathic twitch in my hand that causes that. Some of these puzzle games, some games of this type, have like a weird scoring system where they mark you wrong when you do something that is incorrect, and like you can't, you get a score at the end of each stage that is higher if you made no mistakes. And so, they make my twitch actually penalizing, and it does not matter at all in the grand scheme of things, but I find it incredibly annoying. So thank you very much to the developers of this game for not including any such feature. So, okay, here's something that we know now that's interesting. Because we've filled in so much space here, this is now a group of 6, which means the furthest to the left it can extend is here. We know this cell is not part of that 8, which means none of these cells can be filled in this column because we're looking for that big group of 7, right? So we're getting closer to figuring out exactly where that is. And that'll give us some interesting information when you're solving groups at the edge of the puzzle. Column information becomes row information, and vice versa at the edges. Unfortunately, we don't have any idea where we know where one of these groups of 2 is, but the second one could be just about anywhere. Same deal here. We have no idea what we're looking at. This could be part of the 13, so the 1 could be anywhere over here, or this might be the 1 and the 13 might be pegged all the way to the right. It is, of course, interesting that like the rightmost column only has 1 shaded cell in it, but until we have some idea where that is, it doesn't help us exclude anything just yet. And you can see how something like this can be a little bit calming, especially if, like, let's say you have generalized anxiety disorder, and the state of the world and the wild shit that's going on in the world are just overwhelming you a tiny bit, or putting you in a place where maybe you can't sleep or focus, or bear to think about things. You need a breather. You need to like just take a step back. This can give you that step back. It's been very effective, theoretically. Could be very effective. Shit's been wild lately, huh, y'all? So I'm looking for columns, and there are hints. There are hint features. There's a call button. There is a thing that is on by default that I turned off fairly early, where it just slightly highlights the rows and columns in which it is possible for you to make a deduction that you haven't yet made. But that is on by default. It exists in the game and is on by default, and can be obviously very helpful in a situation like this if you want the game to give you those kinds of pushes. I do not, obviously. I guess the same thing's true over here, right? We know this is 3, so it can only extend another 5 cells this way, so this also can't make it over to this column. If this were the bottommost cell of the 10, yep, it could still include that as a group. So once again, we have no idea. It would be really nice if we were just a little bit too far south and we could prove that like this was the 2. But sadly, no such luck yet. And like rows like this, they have a lot of cells filled in, but they also have a lot of gaps. And so it's very difficult to imagine where things could be spaced. Does this one tell us anything? 6 out to here, a 7 out to here, and then a 2 leaves room for 6 entire tiles worth of slack. But it should mean, actually, so 1x, this is where the 6 ends, This is where the 7 ends. If I'm not mistaken, that 7 should be solid information then. Yeah, that tile is in all of the arrangements of that 7. And then the 6 is going to be just a little bit short. But that is something. And it is something meaningful because this group does not connect, right? These two groups can't connect. It would be too large for the 4. So this is for sure the 1, which tells us that the 4 is locked considerably further up. And this 7 is these 2 cells plus, you know, some number on either side. And that's, we're making headway here. We're making progress. This X actually breaks things up in a way that's really useful for us. So that might be enough to prove that this is the 1, right? If it were the 4, let's say this is a 1, X. Nope, sadly there is not. In fact, there is absolutely enough room for this to be the leftmost box of the 4, and the 1 and the 9 and the other 1 fit in here. Well, one thing we know for sure is that it's not, this box is not part of the 9. So it's either the 1 or the 4, but it's not quite information. It's getting close. At the moment, it's just data. But it was something, you know, one cell gave us a little bit of information that no doubt will help us crack the case overall. Yeah, there's just enough space here still for this to just be part of the 9, and we need to figure out a couple more cells in these columns so that we can start excluding things. Where else do we have a large group unaccounted for? That 8 is not large enough to make... Yeah, it's especially troublesome because of this space up here. Like, it's actually totally possible. This is the 3, then this is a 1, and the 8 starts there. And leaves just like a huge amount of space at the bottom for things to be moved around in. We need a little bit more rigidity. But I don't know how we're going to get it. It's probably looking me right in the face, wherever it is. Okay, well, we can adjust these. We know that these tiles can't be filled in because they would extend up into the 3s inappropriately, and that means this can't be right for row reasons, right? We need a gap of at least 2, which means because this is that upper 4, this tile must necessarily be part of it. And once again, we've nailed down 7 tiles of this 10. Can't extend this far to the side anymore. This 13, we've got 10 nailed down. That is still enough room for it to extend all the way out to the side. Unfortunately, putting down random blocks in this column is not really giving us information because there's only one singular tile marked there anyway. It's going to be a minute before that stuff could possibly be useful. Count is unfortunately still pretty good on that 9, 11, 1 column. Just a lot of room. Okay, things are a little bit weird with this now that we've added this extra row of X's, right? Because there's only room up here for one group. Actually, let me count this out. Is there room to the south of this for all of our groups to fit in? I don't think so. Right? 2, 3, 2. Yeah, so the top 2 group has to be inside of this little area here, and that means it does necessarily use that square, and that rules out a lot of things from this row. Anything that needs 2 tiles for its first group is now blocked off here. And okay, that's something. We can work with that. That also means that this is marked off, and it tells us this is part of the first group of 3 here in this column. Also, real, actual, live information. It also blocks off this, because if this were to be filled in, it would cause a conflict with, as the group extended to the side, it would cause a conflict with that. So, okay, that's all information. And then now that this is marked out like this, the rest of this column would look like, here's the 3 and here's the 2. And then, okay, that doesn't actually change any. It does not give us any new information. But that itself is something significant. Especially because the other column in this, or the other cell in this vertical shaded group is going to complete one of the 2 rows around it. It's just a matter of figuring out exactly which one it is. It's going to push a lot of stuff out of the northern area entirely, which will help us work with some of these larger numbers of cells. So, is there anything else we can figure out from what we just got? With this being guaranteed to be a 3, no, there's so much extra space. There's so much dead space in this column that I don't think we can determine anything yet. Okay, this column's become interesting because there's no longer, while there's still room for a 1 up here, there's no longer room for a group of 2 to the north of this. Right, the 1 could slot in anywhere, but the 2 doesn't fit anywhere, so this must be the 2. Which then tells us that the northernmost representation of that group of 10 looks like this. So significant overlap with the southernmost now. Yeah, there's still plenty of room. I don't think we can fill any of this stuff in based on the rows. Yeah, there's definitely room to the right of this for a 2 and a 1 and a 2. So these could be the ones over here, but it is something. It is more. This breaking up this row doesn't actually help, I don't think. I don't believe that's new. That's going to yield anything new. Like, obviously it curtails the positions that the 13 can be in, but not in like a useful or interesting way. And it's still the possibility that the 1 is to the right of the X. We still can't prove that this, even with the... Well, we didn't even gain anything there. Never mind. Still can't prove anything about this column. So here we have 3x, and then... I guess the northernmost representation of the 9 is now like this. So there is more overlap from the south. In fact, this tile also should be filled in, right? 1x and then 9. Yeah, so it's necessarily the case that any representation is going to have that filled in, which is actually interesting because now this is 8. It can no longer connect to this. Now we have just a little bit too much information here. So we know this group and that group are not the same. And since that means that the rightmost cell of this group can be here, actually extends it to there, which is something, maybe. It will be. space, which eventually will be something. So there's still plenty of room for the 2, 3, 1 up here. Because there's no longer room for 3 and 1 north of this group, I guess the same way we have the same thing here. This must be the 3, which rules out this whole column. And as such, these two, it means our 4 is now 3 of these 5 cells, and this group is 2, and that rules out a bunch of stuff in this column. There we go. We're starting to get some pieces here. The topmost group in this column must be a 2, so it won't fit in there. So we have exactly 4 cells left over in that row, which completes this row as well, incidentally. Okay, that's going to help. That is going to help for sure. This also has to be a 2, so that crosses this out and puts the bottom square of our 9 right there. And with that being the case, the 11 can start here, so it must fill in at least that far down. Yeah, that's useful. So 3x, 1x. The 13 really couldn't be any further north than this at this point. That's a pretty big deal. All this extra exclusion is actually really helpful. Since this is the 3 for this column, x1, x, the 8 would go down at least this far, and from the bottom, if things were set as far down as they could be, 1x. So that's the southernmost representation of the 8. So that's some information too. This is 9 points of this 10 that are now laid out. So we're getting pretty close to having these shapes locked in. Unfortunately, pretty close is not really how knowledge works. It's certainly not how scoring works. There's just enough room for a 7 over here, which is annoying. So you can't rule the space out yet. So this is for sure the 9, though, right? Like there's no way to be uncertain of that anymore. With this group being 2 wide now instead of 1, so that actually is 9 cells altogether. That locks that shape in. Doesn't tell us too much about which group this shape or this cell belongs to, unfortunately, but it does give us. First of all, a lock-in, and secondly, a stopping point for some other groups. So this is 2, this could be 2, 5, and 1. Yeah, if we can narrow this area down a little bit and make it so this is definitely the 5 instead of the 1, then this could, it could be useful. It could do some information upon us. What else have we learned? This unfortunately could still be either the top or bottom 2 in its row. There's just enough space for that to be true, or in its column rather. Same deal here. This could be the 2 or the 5. This is the 3. This is the 9. It could be as far up as that, so we don't have any idea where that 1 is. And the bottom rows are not like restrictive enough yet for us to be able to use a 6, 3, or God forbid a 3, just a lone 3 as information. Not until we can fill something in down here. Apologies for the squeaky chair, by the way. Do we know what group this belongs to? Does this have to be one of the fours is the question. You can have like one. Obviously, this would have to start a little further over, but like this could be the leftmost four, and then the rightmost four. Then this could be the leftmost four. This could very comfortably be the one. So that doesn't tell us anything. Obviously, if it had to be the four, we could mark some of the cells to its right because it can't extend very far to the left, but no such luck. Okay, in this row, there's room for a 2 and a 3 to the left of this X, but no more than that. So then there's room for a 3, just barely, room for a 3 between the X's. And then you could do 3x, 3x1 out here. So that's not very useful. We know that there will be exactly 1 3 between the X's. Actually, that's not even necessarily true. This could all be empty space because you could do 2 3 and then 3 3 1 over here. All right, well, this X only has 7 spaces below it. So there's only enough room for one of those 2 4s. So up here we have to have like 4x, 1x, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's just enough room for the 1 and the 4 to the north of the X. And then there is room for a 4 below the X. And this is the tile that the topmost and bottommost representations of that would overlap. Here you have x1, x1, 2, 3, 4. So there's actually going to be a significant overlap between the representations of that. That's interesting. That's useful. So this right here is 5, 8, 9. Okay, so it could be that this is filled in. If this is filled in, it just takes us to 11. But here's the thing we do know. Whether the 9 extends this way or extends this way, there's going to have to be an X here because either this is the space between the 11 and the second one, or if the 11 extends leftward, then this is the second one, and so it doesn't reach out to contact its neighbor anyway. And that gives us just a little bit more space where that 7 can't be. Right, allows us to fill in 2 more tiles here. Maybe those will be critical. It doesn't look like it for right now. Yeah, the fact that this is made up of such small groups, like there's enough room for the 2 3s over here, so this could be like these 2 groups link up and make the 5. But there's also enough space over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, actually, so like if we imagine the group of 4 and the group of 5, like so the group of 5, the leftmost position of the group of 5 would be like this to prevent the groups from overrunning. And that's actually hugely problematic because there's no way, like this cell no longer fits into the thing. So actually, in order to allow for there to be 2 separate groups of 3 here, this has to be part of the 5, right? Sorry, like that. And there's enough room over here for the 3s, like you can imagine the 3s and then no, because this makes a group of 6. Like the 5 actually has to be these tiles, doesn't it? I think we just divined due to the weird spacing here. And this has to be part of one of the 2 3s. I think that's true. Well, hold on. Is there enough room for this to be the 5? You do an X and then you go 3 and 3. Yes, there is. And then these 2 unite to make the 4. So that actually is not as much information as I wanted it to be. I thought we were in a position there where we could prove these two were connected, but we can't quite. We still have just enough space left open for this to be empty and that to be the 4. That's disappointing. I thought I was onto something there. So this group of 6 is in an interesting spot because it must connect out to one of the cells, but not to the other one of these ones to its left and right. It's going to have to connect through there for another group of 3. If it goes this way, is there still enough room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, X1. Yes, there's exactly enough room for either one of those things still to be viable. A great cruelty upon us all, for sure. Oh, hey. We have a group of 10 marked off now. That's actually really handy because it tells us that that is a group of... there's a group of 4. So there's a 2 over here and a 1 over there, and we can't make those make sense yet, but we can definitely take a look at this. So unfortunately, this tile, this column is going to be really hard to work with. Yeah, there's so many holes in this. Here, if the 6 ends there, then the uppermost 3 could go here, and this could be part of a 2, but it also could easily, very, very easily be part of that uppermost 3, and then you place a 2 and a 3 below it. Less than exciting on that one. Usually at this point in the puzzle, when you get to slap in a bunch of tiles like that, it breaks at least something else. So over here again, we don't know if this is the 11 and the 1 or the 11 and the 1 and the 2. In this row, do we have theoretically the same thing? Yeah, we do. So we can't know if these extend out to their right. And here, this could be the 1 or the 4, so we don't know if that extends either. We know this is the 6 in its column, but that doesn't give us any new information. Oh, now that this is marked off, actually, that means this must extend another tile southward. Something slow, but it's getting there. This row, unfortunately, just has way too few cells in it for us to draw any conclusions just yet. Like 7 would take us to here. And then let that be, it would let that be blank. So the 7 could end here as well, and this could be the 1. So it's really, yeah, it's really hard to tell anything about this row just yet. The numbers are too damn small. I probably swear more than most Nonograms players on the internet, I guess. So, if these two are connected, the group of 9 looks like that. Yeah, I think there's just plenty of room for that sort of thing. Unfortunately. Okay, here's a little something. If this is the 10, and we know it must be given its size, then this must be the 3, because there's not enough space between them to insert a group of 3. And if this is the 3, and this is its topmost tile, then this tile must be part of the group of 2. And that lets us at least close this off. Now we know where that is in that row. We know that this tile can't be part of that, so that gives us that. And then this crosses out. And that's technically something. So the northernmost tile that the 10 could occupy is there, which actually does fill in some space now that we've solidified where some things are. And now that we've done that, we know that this tile can't be filled in because it would turn this group of 8 into a group of 10, which means this is the 5. That's something. This is the 9. That's also something. We're getting more and more pieces. So with this filled in, this could go as far north as here. Yeah. That's still enough space for this thing to be totally to the north of the, for the 3 here, to use this as a southernmost square, or topmost square potentially if the 9 extends downwards. That's not going to rule anything out on that front just yet. What does it do for this? Well, it does constrain this 4 a little bit more in a way that's kind of useful. Okay, here's something we know. This can't be the group of 4, right, at this point, because there's not enough room for a group of 3 and a group of 2 and a group of 2 afterward. So given that this cannot be the 4, these can't connect. Which doesn't tell me a huge amount, except that it curtails the position of this 8 slightly. Right, since there can be at most 3 cells here, this must be filled in, which covers that 11. And tells us that this is in fact a 1, so this is filled in as well. How much do we get out of that? This tile is still, this is still kind of hard to work out. So like if we were to measure this from the bottom, you could have 1 tile here and 1 here and 1 here. And then this would be the 2 and this would be the 1. And then the 3 is all alone by itself way up there. But also if you started building it from the top, you could have the 3 and then a 1 and then a 1. This could be a 2, but it also could just be a 1. Like the point is, I can't necessarily guarantee. Yeah. We don't know which of these is potentially a 2. I don't think. Or if it is logically present, I at least don't see it, so please don't yell at me. Similarly, we can tell that this is the 2, but it doesn't give us any information about which tile is part of the shape, right? And it could totally be 2, 1, 2, or this could be the 1. And yeah, not by itself giving us a lot of evidence. Okay. So it's still the case that this could be the 1. There's enough room for the 2 and the 5 above it. Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case. Okay, well, we do know this. I suppose I can mark that. Like, there's that one group in that column has to be there. And that means this is one of the ones in the row. This could be the 7, or it could be the other one still in the other, you know, there could be a 1 over here somewhere. But that is something we know, and so we should mark. And that means this 3 is constrained a little bit. Doesn't change any of the things we know about our 9, I don't think. But it is more cells filled in, which I always love. You know how I feel about that. You know, at least Boggles is having a good time. This row is so frustrating. It feels like we've almost got information here. It's so close. Yeah, we don't know if this is the end of the 3 and the beginning of the 2, or the end of the 4 and the beginning of the 3. Is there enough room here anymore? So if this were X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. And there's also a 7 space right here. So there's still plenty of space for that row ender to get into. So I have to place a 3 and a 1 in here somewhere, a 3 and a 2 in here somewhere. I guess, actually, we know this is part of that group of 3 now, right? It's either this, and then, you know, you could potentially get a 2 in like that, or 2 like that, and then, or sorry, don't have to be an X. 2 like that, and then, so yeah, that tile is filled in for sure. And I'm pretending I didn't see that because it's information that I don't actually have. Like, okay, hold on. Let's examine this row. I hate to accidentally get a piece of information from the game like overzealously telling me that one of my diagramming spaces is wrong. But do we actually know that this can't be filled in? Yeah, actually. Like, this necessarily runs to here. I just had that marked wrong, basically the whole puzzle. This should be filled in. We do know this. And that means this can't be filled in. So the 12 can't extend down that far anymore. So it's moderately meaningful. It still doesn't resolve which group anything here belongs to, though, unfortunately. We know you're the 7, but you could be the rightmost or leftmost edge of the 7. I can't believe we haven't ruled out anything else in this row yet. It's crazy. Just 1 extra here. So we know these 3 are part of the 7 and not part of the 5. Is that anything? Well, I guess so. Because like if this is the 7, then the leftmost group this could be a part of is the 1, right? And so the 5 would have to extend out from the side of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least. And that does overlap with the rightmost version of the 5. So what does that tell us about these? Unfortunately, not a huge amount. There's only 3 groups in this column, and we now know the position of 2 of them. So that's something. And we can say the same thing here, although we don't, unfortunately, know whether we have the middle or bottom on either of these. We know that these are the top in both cases. But there's enough room for a group to extend below each of these tiles. So we're almost there on that, I guess. But still only almost. 6, 3, 2, 3 totally fits. Yeah, this could be the 3 and the 2, or the 2 and the 3. We spent some time examining this one. We know that we don't know which cell this is. We know this is the 2 in its column, but we have no idea which way it extends. Could be either way. And it wouldn't really interfere with wouldn't interfere with what's next. Oh, hold on. Here's an interesting question. Do we know that this cell is filled? Because we were talking about whether or not this could be part of the 5 before, in which case the cell is full. Or if this has to be the 5, and then this is the 3, and this cell is full in both of those layouts. So we know the 5 can't end here because it would be either a 4 or a 6. So I think we actually do know that this cell is full, and that has some implications because this must be one of the ones. It could be the bottommost, or it could be the second from the bottom, but it must be one of the ones the way it's spaced. So we can block both of these. We know there's at least one tile to the left of that one that should be filled in. I suppose I should have done that earlier. 4x, 1, 2, 3x. Okay, so it is possible for this to be the 2 2s, but at least this tile is filled in, which means this tile is filled in because this would have to be one contiguous group at the bottom. So that's something interesting potentially. This being filled in, once again, might not actually be all that interesting for right now. It is still the case that this... Well, actually, you know what? I think I had said that this, or at least I had said it in my head, that this could be part of the 7, so there's still room over here for 1x5. But actually, this can't be part of the 7, because if it runs like that, you get a 6, and if it runs like that, you get an 8. This has to be the 1, which means over here we have tiles that must be part of the 7. That's something. This is 10 tiles, so it still doesn't quite tell us anything. This is also 10 tiles. I think we do actually know a little something here. I think these tiles are both necessarily true. Because, you know, in the northernmost orientation, you're going to get 3x, 1, 2x, and then the 12. And in fact, that means this cell is also filled in. This is for sure a 3 then, not one of the 2s. That was worth a re-examination. Okay, what else are we getting out of that? Well, all right. Whether this is the second one or the leftmost tile of the 7, we don't know what's next to it. But we do know that this is for sure either the first tile of the 7 or the third tile of the 7, which means 4, 5, 6, which is at least these must be lit up. Right? So that does give us something. Tells us that this 3 occurs here, which is not like hugely useful information, I suppose. This X here helps us define the position of the 11 in this column pretty well, and also tells us that the 1 will be below, which is interesting. Okay. So, because we know the 1 is in here somewhere, this is the 4 and this is the other 4, we can definitely close that. And since this must be the 2 following the 8, we can close that as well. That is a 2, so we should be able to turn that off. In order for this to be a 6, this will have to be filled as well. And that means that this is filled in. Still room for another 1 here. It's not something we can work with right away. Okay. This is really good. This column has been broken down enough. We know this is where the bottom 4 ends. So that gives us a ton of information about the bottom of the puzzle, because there's only 1 group in this column. And that actually like reconfigures our understanding of basically everything. Like, for example, this we now know must be a 1 because there's not room for 3 1s below it anymore. And this being a 1, does this make this a 2? We can go 1, x1, x, x1, x2, or from the top, 3x1, x1, 2. This could still be a 1, so we can't draw underneath it just yet. We don't know if these are connected or separated yet. Yeah, it does boost our knowledge up a little bit over here. Although maybe just to a level that I had achieved or noticed with other columns already. So here we're totally out of space now, right? Like that must be true in order for us to fit all of the shaded cells in, which is great news. Okay, this is something, right? Because this either has to be 3, 3, and this is the 5, or 5 and then 3. And I don't think we can do, there's not enough room for us to jam a 5 in before this. So this is the 5 for sure. That's the 3, and that means there's a 4 in here somewhere. We now know the approximate positions of both of the very small groups in this column, which lets us close off some stuff. Yeah, now that we've got that, sadly, it doesn't rule out, because all of these rows start with very small groupings, it doesn't actually rule anything out by itself. That is annoying. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Yep, that's what I thought. The space between those X's is now exactly 11, so we know that fills in. We know this is the one, finally. Unfortunately, the space between these X's being exactly 11 means this could still be a 1x9 or a 9x1. So it doesn't give us a lot of information about that. But we're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. This could still be the 1 or the 2. Okay, this must be the 1 in this row. So there's not enough space to tuck another thing to its left. So that gives us something. It tells us, for at the very least, in this column, that this is the bottommost 2. Because again, we're out of room for other things. And this is a 3, which isn't, yeah, it's not hugely relevant just yet. Oh, okay, here's something important. This cannot be part of the same group as this. That is 7 spaces. So there must be a break somewhere here. But basically, like, we have the 6 and the 3 figured out. So if this is the leftmost part of the 3, the furthest it could extend is there. And then obviously we're safe to the left of the existing guiding box here. So that does close some things up. Getting closer and closer. This is 17 tall, so that 8 almost enforces itself on the space. Over here we have a total height of 14, which is exactly the wrong number. But we continue to get there. So we know that this has to be the second 4 because there's not enough room for another 4 and then a 1 after it. And because of how narrow all the other spaces are here, this must be the first 4. But it is possible that this is the 4 and this is the 1. We don't know that these connect. But again, because we know that this block at least has to be part of the 4, it has to be either the first or third block. And in either case, this block will also be filled in as part of that. So we know that, and we know this is the 1 in its column because there's no, obviously there's no way to place enough boxes to connect the 3 to it. So that's good. More X's is more good. We continue to place things slowly. So 2, 3, 3, 3. Oh, does that actually work? 2. So here's the first 3, then the second 3, then the third 3, and then the 1. It does. I was gonna say we can close this off, probably. But no, apparently we cannot. There is this tile needs to, or this row needs to lose another tile somewhere else to guarantee that this isn't where the 2 of those go. Okay, we do now know this is the 5, thanks to the fact that there are 2 tiles here. So we can constrain some of this stuff away. These could be the 1s at the beginning of the row. I guess with this one, we know at the very least it's a 2. It's definitely not, there's definitely not room to its left to run all of these groups. So we know for sure this tile will fill in at least. And that does tell us some important stuff here because there's no way to connect these 2 groups now. So that's the 3, that's where the 9 begins, which closes the 9 right here, which closes the 8 right there, which gives us the 7th point of this 8. Not quite all the information just yet. Yeah, we're not quite there just yet. We know the last 2 in the row won't fit in there. So this could be the 6, and this could be these two could join together to form the 3. Or these two could join together to form the 6, and the 3 could be to the right. In any case, this tile is filled in. We know that. Also, while we're messing with this row, we should probably mark that the 11 is completed as well. And see, that's interesting because now we know this space is closed. This is definitely not the 3 anymore, or the 2 anymore. Although I guess that was true as soon as we put these in. So now there's like just enough space, unfortunately, for this to still be the 2. We would be able to fit in all the other shaded tiles. But also this could be our first 3, and this could be... So, once again, just data, not information. We'll get something out of it eventually. With this having moved up, the floor here effectively having moved up, the first tile that 1 could be would be here, and then that means that the 10 can only start here, so. That's why we gained a tile there suddenly. This has to all be connected, given the size of it. So that's something. That's a 10 and we know it, may as well fill it in. Then we have 2 and 1. We're so close here. All right, this is 3 and 2. Now that we have this marked, this X marked below this, we know this is where the 2 has to terminate. So that's where the 3 terminates, giving us our other group of this row. That's something. There's a 1 down here somewhere. Yeah, we don't know which tile contains the other point of that 3, nor the 1 for the other row. So you're the 6. Have to be the 6. Which means this is the 12 here. If this is a 7, it has to extend at least that far to the right. Okay, we know that's finished. So, I mean, we're like right on the edge here of locking down this bottom area. That would have to be filled in to satisfy the 8 in this column, and that means that the 7 in this row is also satisfied. Slowly, slowly, slowly. So there's a 1 in one of these spots. There's a 1 in one of those spots. There's kind of a lot of that going around. We have a lot of slightly unplaced 1s. Which is like very annoying. All right, so at this point we know 3. This has to be a 1 because there's no longer room for it to be anything else, which makes this a 2 and these both of the other 1s. That's all good information. This is 2 to finish this row. We still don't know the positions of the 3s yet. Here's the 5 to finish this row. We've narrowed down enough space now that this 2 and 9 is definitely meaningful. Right, and in fact, an 8 by itself makes it out to here at the very least. So what if we just said we got to do this to fill in the 4 at the very least, and we know neither of those will have anything in them for sure, nor this, which I guess has implications for this column. And then those things. Okay, what else? So a 3 and a 2. The 3 must be in those 3 tiles in order to fit in here. Here we have a 2 and a 2, which is a lot sketchier. But I guess no matter what, this must be blank, and so this must be filled in. This is going to be one of the tiles in the leftmost pair. And that being the case, actually we can just fill that in and complete the 9. This needs to be a 3, and look at this. We're getting some little cascades here. We're getting information pouring into other informations. This has to be a 2, 1, 1, and the only way to make that work is that. Okay, this filling in tells us that, without a doubt, the rightmost group in this row is here. And so that's how we complete that one. You end in a 1 group. You end in a 1 group that is thus far unrepresented. And you are the bottom of the 13, which is currently 12. So we'll have to figure that out. We know this is part of the 2 here. So X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This must extend at least this far, giving us the final thing in this column. Uh-oh. But that would make... Did I make an error there? Because that would make something impossible. Okay, yeah, notice the way we've marked stuff down here has changed things. I may have made an error somewhere. Because now, to the right of this X, there's no longer room for 2 groups of 3 and a group of 1. We can only fit 1 group of 3 over here. That would mean this has to be the second group of 3, this has to be the third, and the group of 2 has to go over here. Let me try filling that in. This can't be anything. And then we don't know anything about the position of this group of 3, right? Well, actually, no. We know this this tile must be part of it. And if that's the case, this tile connects upward to the 5 because we already have the position of both the other groups in this column. Which means that's not a thing either. Okay. Okay, this is interesting. The fact that this column can't extend this far has killed the last of the spaces that the 7 could possibly fit in over here. Although I guess we kind of knew where the 7 was, so I should have marked those out earlier. But that's certainly going to be meaningful, and it leaves a bunch of spots where like there's only 6 tiles left, or only 6 spaces left for the 6 filled in cells that we have to do on this side. Getting a little distracted. Okay, so that makes this column as solid as it's getting. There's only 1 group in this column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That finishes the 10 in that row. And in fact, having been given the rightmost possible cell for that. We can just finish it off very quickly. We know now here, 1 and 13, we got a 1 separated from the other numbers. So that is, in fact, our 1. We can glom all this together into a single group of 12, currently 12 tiles. So could extend 1 more point in either direction. In this column, this will have to be a 2. In this column, this will have to be true. As we had 7 cells extending 1 in either direction. That'll finish at least that part of a row. Okay, this needs to be 3 and 2. So then this will have to be a 2, necessitating the second box of this column goes here. Alright, that finishes our 13. Look at that, we got it. Easy. Here's the thing about puzzles. These are supposed to end with groups of 1. The thing about puzzles is they're very easy. Nobody's ever had a problem with one. So that finishes all these columns. Look at this. We're almost there. We're very, very close. We still don't exactly know what the situation is here. But I think I have made an error somewhere. Right? Because in order for this to be right, these would both have to be lit up in order to satisfy the 7 here. But that does break some stuff. We might have to finagle a little bit here. So that's a 13. That finishes this. I'm going to try my best to finish solving around it. Obviously, having a piece of bad information can cause a lot of knock-on problems in a puzzle like this, a logic puzzle. So see, this wants to be the third thing in this column, but that would require this not to be here. Because this could be shifted 1 tile. Yeah, and this doesn't actually want to be filled in. Okay. And then once again, we have a situation here where I've like run something to the wrong side very slightly. So one of these two is wrong, is the problem here. I felt like I was seeing how... I felt like for a moment there I saw the mistake that I made, like the 2 transpositions I must have made, but I have lost it now. So if one of these is wrong, like either this has to slide back this way, which causes all kinds of problems, or I think it's going to end up being this, that I drew this cell. Yeah, these columns both need for those to fill in. That finishes this row. And the problem we have here is... Yes, I ruled something out incorrectly over here, it looks like. That's a little bit of sloppy, like, cleanup via logic that we probably shouldn't have, but that's like one of the things about computerizing these puzzles, right? They will give you information sometimes in situations you might not have had it yet. Like this something like this is tricky. Like, where do you notice you've made a mistake? Because I already don't remember if the game told us before I noticed that things weren't lining up. And it's something that we fixed by just like looking at where we were over in the things, instead of like working out the logic of the clues. It's the thing we fixed by looking at where we must have been wrong and sort of easing the cells in a direction. And that still counts as, like, it wasn't guessing, but as you can tell, I'm a little uncomfortable with it. It's not the purest solution possible. So this column here where we have 7 things to fill in, we now only have 8 cells in total. So we may as well fill in the middle 6 here. This column is finished. So this is where the other thing for this row has to be, which completes this column. And then these columns are finished, and here's 4, and there you go. Here's the thing about puzzles. They're very easy, and who wouldn't love a basic kitchen sink in a sort of dramatically pink painted kind of wood pattern? Listen, I'm not here to judge how you want to decorate your adorable rodent's home Squeak Home. I would never do that. In no small part because I will never know. So that's the thing. That's home Squeak Home. There's, yeah, like I said, there's stickers, there's dress up, there's can we look at the yeah, here we go. We can look at the appearance stuff. It's surprisingly thorough. You can do a lot of work with the various body parts and the recoloring and the layering colors on colors, and yeah, it's good. It's the best rodent creator I've ever seen in a video game, hands down. And I think that is worth something. Discard my change. I didn't make any changes. Anyway, that's going to be it from me and Boggles here. That's got longer than I thought it was going to be. That's Squeakross, Home Squeak Home. It's a pretty solid Picross nanograms game with also another whole solid game grafted onto it that I think is probably pretty great value if you like both of them, and pretty good value still if you're into just either half of it, probably. Thank you all so much for watching. When you come back next time, we have some more little things I want to show you before we dig into my big exciting new release for the week. So come back for that. It probably won't take 2 hours to do it, and we'll see you then.